I'm surprised you don't have a bigger Jufro. I was expecting it to just really kind of be pushing the Mac.
My wife has been chopping it back every few months, so there's been I think 3 quarantine haircuts so far. Yeah.
100 years, our family will prosper, and then one day, everything changed.
It's been 100 years. The pickle brine preserved him perfectly. We were able to track down a great-grandson.
Greenbaum? This is nuts.
From the start of the development of this film, how much did the characters of Ben and Herschel change just up until what we see in the finished cut of the film?
Quite a bit. I think, the early drafts were much different, and were kind of more... We're a little more wild, I think, in some ways. Honestly, we tried as much to drill down on the emotional core of the movie as possible and really try to focus on making it about, kind of legacy and family and grief and loss and moving forward and needing one another. And those themes were there all the time, but there were things that we worked hard to kind of bring more to the forefront of the film.
As far as where Simon Rich's script started, how much was it kind of tailored for you versus how much did you make it your own?
It was always tailored towards me. He always, from the first time he pitched it, he said as he was writing the short story, he was saying to himself, if he ever made a movie version of it, he was picturing me, basically. So it was always kind of, the film was always conceived around, and he thought I should play both roles. So the film was always kind of conceived around that premise, basically, yeah.
Your parents, where are they? They passed away. It was a car crash. He will tell me everything of their deaths, how their bodies died, their faces as the life left. We will bond over our pain.
Knowing how vital, pretty basically, improvisation is in the making of your films, I'm curious how that actually worked on this one when you don't have someone to kind of bounce off of in scenes.
I have myself to bounce off of in scenes. Yeah, it was really complicated, and it was a challenge, and there were, not every scene is like that, but there were some scenes that we decidedly wanted to give a loose improvisational feel to, and it was very complicated. I would, because we shot the movie in 2 chunks. I was all the Herschel stuff first, and then all the Ben stuff, so I would improvise as Herschel, and I would be looking at a person, but I would tell them some takes just don't talk. I'm just going to fill in my head what I will say in a month from now when we shoot the other half of the scene. So, I would improvise and then leave pauses for myself as I imagined what I would be improvising as the other character, and then keep going. And then on the other side, I would listen to what I had done, and then I would fill in the gaps that I had left for myself, basically.
I have an idea. We start pickle business.
That's a very stupid idea, Herschel. You have no wife, no children, no friends, no job.
You need help. I'm fine.
You're not alone!
What would you say was the most challenging day on set, and what would you say was the most rewarding day on set?
Some of the more challenging scenes were the more simple ones, honestly. Me making seltzer with him, us arguing after the billboard was torn down in the apartment. The ones that really just feel kind of completely naturalistic, because the timing is so specific, and there's 2 shots that were both in the same frame a lot of the time. The end, the Barbra Streisand thing, things like that you see both characters, and it is very loose and kind of riffy feeling, but it is clearly not riffed because it's incredibly rigid the way we're shooting it. Those scenes were challenging, but what is rewarding is we kind of could splice it together in the moment because of how we shot it. So you could watch playback and just see if it worked, basically, and it was mostly, there's some cutting out, but it was largely in camera. So you could see we're both looking in the right place, and I pick up the cup at the right time, and we cheers at the right time, and we both walk over there at the right time. And when you would watch it back and it worked, it was actually very, very gratifying.
In old country, we have saying.
I'm sure this has aged well.
If man does not throw punch, it is because this man secretly had polio arm.
Did you do the fall into the pickle vat, or was that a stunt person?
I did not the whole. I did a shorter one. I did not do the one as it is portrayed. That was a man named Simon, who's a very good stunt man.
Would you have been there for it? Did you want to do it?
In general, I thought it was, yes. In general, I will do whatever they tell me is safe to do. And that was deemed unsafe for me to do.
Comedy is just one of the most magical parts about the theatrical experience. And it is kind of sad that we won't have the opportunity to see this in a theater full of people just laughing their asses off. And I'm just curious about kind of your role in the conversations about moving the movie to HBO Max and also just your general feelings about it.
This film, very early on, we recognized was probably a good contender for a streaming release. And although we made it with Sony originally in Colombia, who is a major giant studio, the first time we all watched it together, Tom Rothman, who's the head of the studio, was like, I love this movie. I don't think we can release it. And we honestly were very happy to be having that conversation because we also felt like it would probably was not the best path for this film. And the version that they would need to release was not the version that we necessarily wanted to make, and anyone, them as well. So, because I think Tom very wisely, he, was one of the architects of Fox Searchlight. And so he understands how different studios are built to release different types of movies. And he was just like, Sony is not made to release these types of movies. And I know that because Fox Searchlight would have been exactly right to release this type of movie, And so we knew a streaming platform was probably the best avenue for it. And the idea of being, HBO Max's first film was very appealing to us and very exciting to us, and not being kind of one of a million squares on a screen is, something I'm always sensitive to.
They cured polio, right? A guy named Jonas Salk.
Was he Jew?
He was.
Yes.
Where have you been kind of creatively? Like, have your juices been flowing in this time where you kind of just have time, which is such a luxury in this industry?
I'd say it's ebbed and flowed. I think I've had bursts of creativity, and then I've just completely shut down for weeks on end, and the idea of writing is ludicrous to me. So it's really swung between, being wildly productive and writing, honestly, more than I have in years probably, and then just, thinking the thought of putting anything down on paper is just appalling.
As a filmmaker, as a storyteller, looking at the larger industry, how you think that all of this time that we've spent in 2020 indoors dealing with the pandemic, how you think that is going to affect film in the next few years?
I'm not sure. What I do think is that I personally don't think that any element of American society will function the way that it used to until there is a vaccine for this virus. It does not seem like people here are incredibly interested in doing what is necessary to contain the spread of this pandemic. And that is largely at the advice of their very ill-informed representatives. And so, my instinct is that I can't necessarily imagine being on a set without there being a vaccine, personally. But that is also speaking to the things I know that we have to film next, and know that they are all very big things. Honestly, as producers, there's some very, very small projects that we have that we're looking at ways to film them.
It's been almost 6 years since you and Evan last directed a film. The interview came out at the end of 2014. And I know that you've been directing episodes like Preacher and Black Monday, Future Man, but I'm curious just where your head is at as far as like directing another feature.
We've been writing a film that we would hopefully direct throughout this time. And we've been working on it for years and years and years and years, honestly. Truthfully, after the interview, we were a little traumatized, I think. And the idea of going into television and directing a lot of TV shows and pilots was a very educational experience to us. And we wanted to try a lot of different things as directors and work with different cinematographers, different actors, different tones, different styles. And it was actually an incredible learning experience for us. And after years of doing that, we feel like we are ready to go back into, directing film, basically, yeah.
Is this your father? No, that's David Bowie. Is this your mother? No, that's also David Bowie. That whole poster is David Bowie.